For many people who learn to code, the ultimate dream is to become a remote software engineer and to travel the world while you're working. Well, since January of this year, I have been living this lifestyle as both a content creator and a remote software engineer for our own tech startup. And I want to tell you how you can do this too by becoming a remote software engineer. And you don't even need to start your own startup to do this either. In fact, our own tech startup will soon be hiring remote software engineers, so I know that it can be done. So you can do this via both your own business or as an employee or via a third party, and we'll talk about all of them in this video. And all of this work even if you currently have no previous experience whatsoever and even if you're just starting out. I'm currently here in Thailand with my main base in Dubai, and on top of that I have stayed in 2 other countries too over the past 8 months. And I can tell you that traveling, not just on vacation, but actually living in different countries is one of the most transformative experiences that you can give yourself. But I'm also here to tell you the reality of becoming a remote software engineer, and that it is not easy. And to do this, you need to execute the right plan, which I have broken down into 4 steps. And by the way, you cannot miss any of these steps if you want to do this, so make sure you listen. And this is not just like any other video you've seen on this topic either, because I also want to tell you how being a remote developer is by far the best way for you to not only make tons of money, but to save the most money out of any career path that I have seen. But before we get into all of that, we need to start with step 1, which is laying your groundwork. So before we even think about becoming a remote developer, you need to understand one thing. You shouldn't become a software engineer just because you wanna travel the world. Being a nomad engineer in Thailand does not mean you're on some sort of permanent vacation. If coding makes you hate your life, cheap pad thais will not save your days. Now with that out of the way, how do we get started? For me, everything started on a rainy day in Helsinki. I was working in an office as a corporate banker, and every day all I could think of was, oh, I wish I could get out of here. I wish I could get a transfer to a country where I wouldn't have to worry about missing work because my car was frozen. Yes, that is an actual thing that happens in Finland. And the worst is when there's so much snow in the yard that you literally have to go and shovel the snow out of the way before you can get out with your car. Yes, that is the reality of living in Finland. Anyway, I realized that wishing and begging for my company to transfer me to a location I wanted to live in that wasn't as cold as Finland wasn't going to be what I wanted to rely on. Besides, I wanted the chance to live in different places around the world and move around, not just transfer to one place and then stay there. So I needed to go back to the drawing board. And long story short, I learned that the best industry for me to get into to give me the freedom to travel the world was going to be software engineering. But before I could kiss goodbye to the code of Finland, there was one big obstacle in my way. I didn't know how to code, and I had no experience and no computer science degree. So as obvious as this sounds, the first step is to learn to code. Like, this step doesn't change from whether you want to become a normal software engineer or a remote software engineer. Really, it sounds so obvious, but a lot of the time we tend to get our head in the clouds and get our minds off the work that actually matters. Thinking about remote opportunities before you've even learned to code is like when you're trying to get fit, and instead of going to the gym to build muscle, you just spend your time researching the best poses to show off your muscles on Instagram before you even have the muscles in the first place. In terms of what to learn specifically, I recommend just something like web development with either Python or JavaScript in the backend and React in the frontend, because those tend to have the highest demand and will give you the best chance of landing that remote job when the time comes. And if you want to learn the skills you need to land a remote job as fast as possible, I do have my own paid program down below where you can join the more than 400 students already inside and get support from me to reach your goals with software development, whether it's a remote job or just a normal job. Now in step 2, we're finally ready to start booking our flights to Bali and to start your digital nomad life not so fast, because there's still something else we need, and that is some experience. And yes, I know you would want to find remote opportunities straight away, and while it is possible, and I will tell you how you can do that in a second, my main recommendation is actually that for your first paid role, your foot in the door, you don't worry too much about finding remote work yet, and here's why. In your first role in the industry, it's going to be much harder to convince your employer to allow you to work entirely remotely, and especially from a different country. That's because you haven't built trust with them yet. So in the beginning, I would just say look for any opportunity that allows you to build your skills and experience, and then worry about transitioning into remote work later. And we'll discuss how to do that in a second. And this is what I did as well. As someone with no previous experience in tech and no computer science degree, my dream was always to work remotely, but I was going one step at a time because I understood that in the beginning, the biggest thing for me was just to find experience. And that opportunity for me ended up coming with Deloitte in London, where I started work in the office, 9 to 5, commuting in the freaking sweaty underground. It sucked, but I was gaining the experience that I needed. Okay, so if you really want to jump straight into remote life, there is a way to do it straight away, and that is through freelancing. So I discovered freelancing when I found this YouTube channel, Stefanovic, and his videos about how he achieved this remote lifestyle through freelancing. So I ended up actually booking a coaching call with him to figure out how I could become a freelancer as well. And it really opened my eyes to the benefits of a freelancing over a regular job. You get better pay, more flexibility, and most importantly, it's easier to get location independence, because when a company hire a freelancer, they're not employing you. Instead, you work for them as a self-employed individual or a company, which means they have a lot less legal and tax restrictions on where you can work. But again, it's harder to get a freelance project immediately with no experience, because freelancing comes with a bit more responsibility. So if you want to do it without working an office job first, you need excellent projects in your resume, because building projects is essentially just experience. If you can show to someone that, look, here's what I built, that shows that you know how to code, and that can, in some cases, replace actual experience. Now, if you did part 2 and you got your first job, this experience that you have gained should speak for itself, and you can either transition into freelancing, or, which might be actually the fastest way, you can just talk to your manager at your current job and see if you can transition into remote. This is actually what I did. I spoke to my project manager to see if it was okay for me to work completely remotely every day and not come to the office at all, and he was actually okay with it. Now, I still had lots of restrictions at my company. While I could work from home, I could not work from abroad apart from like 30 days a year. But this was a step in the right direction, as I could at least work from home whenever I wanted rather than having to go to the office, even if this was still my shitty old apartment in London. But realize what I had done first. I had not gone in and talked about working remotely straight away. I had proven myself as a reliable employee first to show that I can do good work even from home. And I had done extremely well and done really great work to earn the trust of my manager and my team to work from home. And obviously this depends on the company. Many companies will still, unfortunately, as a policy, require everyone to come to the office, which sucks, but it is what it is. But you could also get lucky. Your manager could even allow you to work remotely after like 1 year or something like that, and now you've achieved your dream. But the first big mistake people make is that they assume that just because you can do your work from your laptop, your company will just allow you to move to Thailand. I hate to burst your bubble, but it often doesn't work that way. To work from abroad, the company will have lots of tax implications to deal with, and especially if you're still junior, they might not be willing to go through this extra burden to deal with taxes in a different country, for example, just to allow you to sip on $1 coffees in some coffee shop in Bali. And this is where we get to step 4, which is total remote freedom. Now, I realized that working as an employee for a company was never going to give me the total freedom that I wanted, because I didn't want to have to ask for anyone's permission to go abroad. I wanted to just be able to do it whenever I wanted. So what I decided to do is take my leap of faith and leave my job entirely to work on my own projects as an independent software engineer, not an employed one, and with freelancing as a backup option. Now, for you, I understand you might not want to leave your job. You might want to stay at your job, and you can do this remotely too. In your case, I would just recommend freelancing. Freelancing is a much better path to total location freedom than being employed. In your case, I would recommend transitioning into remote work via your job if you can, but if you can't, your experience should now allow you to transition into freelancing much more easily. But to me, being completely self-employed was always the only way to achieve total, complete freedom. Now, I understand that I was able to do this much earlier than I thought, because I already had this YouTube business that could support me while my coding projects were not making money yet. But if you want to do this, here's what I recommend. Do get a job first. or become a freelancer. That is what I did, even though I knew it wasn't my ultimate goal, because I knew it would allow me to gain tons of valuable experience and support myself while I was doing step 2, which is to start a side project. Now, I actually ended up starting this YouTube channel before I ended up starting any tech side project, but as a developer, you should have pretty good work-life balance, and if your goal is true freedom, I don't think you should use your time you have outside of work to go party or watch Netflix. From 9 to 5, work your job, and from 5 to 9, start a side project. And once your side project matches your 9 to 5 income, you will be able to leave your job, and now you can go be a digital nomad completely on your own terms. Now, whether you achieve your remote freedom as an employee, as a freelancer, or self-employed developer, what this allows you to do is completely optimize your finances and your life in a way that no other lifestyle allows. Because when you are able to work from anywhere, first of all, you need a lot less income to sustain yourself. For example, let's say you build a project that solves a problem and you are able to earn $2,000 a month with it. You can live a very comfortable life with $2,000 a month in Thailand or South Africa or Bali, whereas $2,000 a month in San Francisco would barely get you a shoebox. And once your income gets to the point where the biggest thing is no longer cost of living but rather taxes, you can set yourself in a place like Dubai, qualify for 0% tax by living there for 3 to 6 months of the year, and when it gets too hot in the summer, you can just go travel in Southeast Asia or Europe or the US and live your life as a digital nomad. So while you can become a normal developer and live in your usual high-cost, high-tax city like San Francisco, New York, London, realize that even with $150,000 salary, you'll be paying half of that in taxes and probably the rest of it in cost of living. Whereas with becoming a remote developer, you can completely slash your cost of living down to very low numbers, and once your earnings become very high, you can slash your taxes to 0 or close to 0 if you play your cards right. And so that is why, to me, just becoming a digital nomad, becoming a remote developer is just the greatest life hack and the best way to just hack your finances out of any path that I've seen. But let's not sugarcoat things too much here. Being a digital nomad is not for everyone. So before you get into this path, go and try it. Take time off and spend 3 months in Thailand or Greece or Mexico, wherever location you want, and emulate this lifestyle to see if it is for you before you get into it. And there's a lot more to this that I cannot even cover here. So next week on my newsletter, Internet Mate Club, I will be telling all my subscribers in detail the pros and cons of being a remote developer. So if you are interested and you want to hear about that, you can sign up to my newsletter down below for completely free. If you want to follow my life around the world, as well as the story of our tech startup, which I am building here remotely, I have been updating you guys quite regularly over on my Instagram at InternetMcoder. So if you haven't followed me over there yet, I think you're missing out. So make sure to follow me there. Link is going to be down below. So if you're still in step 1 and you're still learning to code, I want to remind you that the most important thing for you to focus on now is to nail down your process of learning to code. And to do that, I recommend that you watch this video next, where I tell you the 3 things that made learning to code much faster and much easier than it ever was before. So I think you will find a lot of value there. Go watch it next.